What's up, guys? This is Jesse DeRozier with Hydrilla Gorilla Guide Service here on Lake Guntersville. Today's date is April 18th, 2025, and this is what's on the deck. So this past week, we saw a continual change in what the fish were doing. We had the full moon, basically Saturday, and the fish were up and spawning. And as the week progressed, a lot of those fish, the females, proceeded to leave the area, and a lot of the males transitioned from guarding eggs to fry guarders. So they pulled off the beds and were kind of moving around some covered areas where the fry could have a little bit of protection from the bluegill. These fish that continue to be on the move, they are difficult to catch, but if you catch up to them at the point where they've taken a little bit of a rest stop, you can definitely catch some. We saw a lot of 1 to 3 fish on a spot, make another small minor move and catch another 1 to 3 fish. So it was a lot of just little short moves kind of in the creek that we were focusing on for the day, that kind of helped us to remain catching fish. But the fish definitely are on the move, and I'll go ahead and share now with you what baits we used to try to catch these fish as they were making their moves. So earlier in the week, when the fish were up shallow and of course bedding, the wacky rig continued to catch quite a bit of fish up and around these areas. That will continue to catch a lot of fish this time of year. We've got the bluegill spawn fixing to come up. That's going to be really deadly on bluegill beds, as will the other bait that we use this week, which is a Nico rig. I used 2 different colors this week. I did use June bug or June bug red in that ultra speed worm, and you can work this in those shallow areas or out deeper if the fish are moving out on some of these secondary points, kind of working their way back out toward the main river. So I used that June bug where I had stained water, and then as the water started to clean up as the week progressed, today I actually swapped over and started throwing one that had a little bit more natural coloration to it, and did quite well with that one as well. So just kind of adjust the color of your worm based on where you're fishing at, how the fish are reacting to what you're throwing. But we've had a lot of wind lately, and there's been a lot of stain or light stain in the water up in these shallow areas, and as a result the June bug was doing really well all week, and even as the water cleared it still continued to catch fish. So I have not made the change off from that, but I did actually introduce a more natural color today. So as far as the soft plastics, you can definitely still be throwing a light Texas rig right now, a Carolina rig. Those are other options as well that would be great choices. I kept it very simple this week. Basically we used the Nico rig probably 90% of the time once we got past that bedding window with the full moon. So I put that wacky rig down and started picking up that Nico rig anytime that we had calmer winds, or if we were in an area that was more sheltered and protected, or around these bedding areas. That being the case, a Nico rig is really bad about getting thrown off of the hook, and as a result what I did is I actually I'll use this one because you can see it better, and I added 2 bands. There's a black band and a red band on there to help hold that worm in place. I went through about 2 packs of worms the first day that I started throwing this. My weights were gone, the worm was gone, and it just got a little frustrating. So I ended up taking 2 bands, putting it on each one, and it cut that down tremendously from losing worms. As far as the weights, when the fish comes up and shakes his head, sometimes that weight will go flying. So what I did is I took that Avid Angler's fishing glue, put a dot on the lead weight before I shoved it up into the worm, and that fixed that problem. The other thing that we did is added some Thump Gel to our soft plastics this week, as we've been doing, which is continuing to help with getting those fish to commit, hold on to that soft plastic, and literally if you don't set the hook fairly quick, they'll have it down the hatch. And I had mentioned last week a trick about getting that out. I guess I'll go ahead and kind of go over that again. If you look at how the hook is positioned in a fish's mouth, basically, let's see if I can illustrate with this. You can see how the hook is facing to this side. If you look down in its mouth and you're looking down in the gullet and it's down past its throat and it's stuck and then the point is facing that side, reach through the gill plates. Reach up, grab the line right above your hook and pull it. What you're going to do is you're actually going to invert that hook and give it a tug, and you almost hear it pop a lot of times. And what it does is now that hook is setting just like that. Now if you reach in with your pliers through the mouth and pluck straight up, you won't kill that fish. It won't bleed. If you reach in and you don't do that and you're trying to turn this, that hook is scoring all inside that area, and it'll bleed like crazy and that fish will die. If for some reason the fish bleeds, take some Powerade, Gatorade, a soft drink, anything that has citric acid in it, guys, will work. Citric acid actually tightens up the blood vessels to help it cut off the bleeding. So hang it over the side of the boat or over your live well if you're fishing a tournament or something. Pour it through the gill, just like you would kind of like if you were treating a cut with peroxide. You're going to do little doses, right? Give it a second, kind of let it work, give it a little bit more. Do that 5-6 times. You'll see that bleeding slow down tremendously. And then if you're actually fishing a tournament, put the fish in the live well, pour the rest of the drink in there with it. Let it swim around in that. It will completely seal that off. That fish will come out of your live well just as lively as can be. It will save that fish's life, and it'll keep you from having, the loss of weight during the tournament. But ultimately, more importantly, is going to be saving that fish's life. So that was basically it for our soft plastics this week. We had quite a bit of wind this week, and I'm a power fisherman, so when I've got wind, I like throwing moving baits. And this week, the number one, I would have to say, is going to be the chatterbait. And if you look at that chatterbait right there, you see all those strands on the top are just chewed off. There's nothing left. They are absolutely munching the chatterbait right now. Granted, you got to have windy conditions. Very, very low light or having wind is a must with a chatterbait. Second to that was a deep chatterbait. So as these fish move out from these flats, they're getting out off these long tapering points, they're getting out along these ledges, coming out of the creeks. So being able to hit a deeper water column, this is a 3/4 ounce chatterbait. You can definitely even go up to the 1.25 ounces if you wanted to and work this out even deeper. But a lot of these fish have started to move out into a little bit deeper depths, and in order to be able to catch them on those chatterbaits, up your weight. It'll help it to get down. You still want to be ticking the tops of the grass, and that will make a big difference. You can still fish it just like normal, but you'll be able to attack those deeper fish. The next bait was absolutely a lipless. So now that the spawn is over, I'm picking the lipless back up. Now I'm not going to be throwing reds, I'm going to be throwing shad patterns. The reason why is we've got a shad spawn coming on, and we've ran into it twice so far. Last week I hit one in an area that for the last hour and a half before dark I could see it developing, and we absolutely just plowed the fish for an hour and a half in there. The next morning went back and the shad were gone, the fish were gone. It was like crickets in there. So it was definitely a shad spawn that took place. Well, knowing that, I started keeping my eye out to see if any more of that was developing. The water temperatures have been fluctuating just a little bit night by night, but ultimately they're getting very, very close to that 70-degree mark. Well, the other day we went into that same area where I had seen the shad spawn the week before when it was 65 degrees in there. I looked down and it was 70 degrees. And I thought, this could get right. Started looking around with my live scope and started seeing some shad. I was like, okay. Well, in the first 15 minutes of our trip, my client stuck a 6.5, put it in the boat, and it was on from there. We proceeded to, for 8 hours, absolutely put the smack down on these fish. And all that we used was a chatterbait and a lipless. Those two baits. We lose a lot of fish on a lipless when you're reeling them in as fast as we were. We'd set the hook on them and we're like, oh, that was 1.5 pounds. Oh, it's 2 pounds. And we didn't care. We were just skiing them in. And if they flipped off, they flipped off. But we ended up landing 132 fish. We ended up losing probably another 50 plus. It was absolutely phenomenal. But that was due to the fact of paying attention to our surroundings. I noticed the water temperature. I noticed the bait that was in the area. And I knew that I had already seen one shad spawn go down last week in the same area. So I started paying attention and thought, if this is the development of a shad spawn for tonight, there's probably fish moving in here with them. I reached down, I turned on my hydro wave, and the fish started blowing up. Absolutely knocking shad out of the water for 8 hours, and we pounded on them. Absolute epic day. We ended up with, our best 5 was 25.33. Out of that 132 fish. So we had some really good weight, absolutely phenomenal numbers. It was truly a day to remember. Our last bait for the week is, again, shad pattern, is that Producer Swimbaits. And now that the shad spawn, those shad were in that 4.5 to 5 inch range. So sticking with that size class right now is going to be a good option. The shad are larger right now, and they are starting to look to want to spawn. So keep your eyes out on the lake for that development in the next couple of weeks, especially as the water temperature continues to rise. And most of the lake, it's probably 65 to 67 right now. There are a few select areas that are getting up in the water temp. But that being the case, just pay attention because you may run into that, and if you do, it may be one of the best days of your fishing career. Outside of that, going forward, we are again looking at big baits. The bull wake, or the bull shad wake, the bluegill wake. The bluegill are fixing to come up and start their spawn, and when they do, taking the bluegill wake and running it over the tops of those bluegill beds can get you some absolutely vicious strikes. When you get just to the outside of those bluegill beds, hold on, because a lot of times that's where those big fish are lurking at. And when that breaks outside of that area that the bluegill feel comfortable in, that's where that big explosion is going to come from. The bull shad wake, working this out on those big main lake flats around your break lines and things like that, where these fish are starting to get out from the creeks and getting out back out on these big flats. Gonna get some absolutely epic explosions on this thing, as well as some great quality fish. So if you have not ordered yours yet, I'd go ahead and get them on the way, because that bite is fixing to go down, guys. I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually going out tomorrow and doing a little bit of scouting myself to see if that is already in development. But that's basically it for this week, guys. I hope this information helps you out this week out on the water. Hope to see you guys out there, and until next week, tight lines.